How you doing, everybody? And welcome to, I guess, episode one of Building Out Loud. It is a pleasure to be here for our maiden voyage of this new podcast with me, your host, Mac the VC, aka Matt Conwell, with my amazing co-host, Liam Gill. How you doing, Liam?
Doing well. I'm looking at our videos right now, and I'm feeling like I need to get something on the wall behind me.
Well, I have the really amazing painting behind myself, and Liam is just in a white box with like nothing. But for those who don't know, Liam lives a minimalist lifestyle, so like this is right on brand for him. But thank you everybody for joining us. For those of you who know me and Liam from our previous podcast at Inside Business, we are now doing our own. We're venturing out on our own to the Build Out Loud. That's right, building out loud. And so, and going along with the theme of the day of building out loud, that's what our topic for the day is going to be about. What does it mean to build out loud? What does it mean to build in public? What does it mean to grow and be vulnerable and start a business with everybody involved in seeing what you're doing? We're seeing a lot of this in Web3. We're seeing some of this with other startups. We're seeing funds do this, like mine and Rare Breed. So let's talk a little bit about building out loud. And so, Liam, as somebody who is currently building out loud with your new side project, Law for Startups, tell us about it. What's that been like, man?
Yeah, I think we obviously talked about something similar on the Inside Business podcast before, where we discussed the pros and cons, I think, of using Twitter to build your startup. I think it's along those same lines. There's advantages in that you get to talk to an audience directly, you get to get instant feedback, you get to build a community. If you do it right, obviously you're a prime example of how good it can go. You raise your entire fund almost exclusively using Twitter, and you've raised a second fund, and that's how you grew your brand, that's how you've grown your business, and it's how you've been able to take over like your own life, control your own dreams, get things going, put your vision into action, all those cliches. You've done it all through building out loud. For me, I've always taken the approach actually of doing the opposite. So with my first company, and I think some of this comes from having a legal background, our preference was to keep everything behind wraps, to be very, very specific about what we pushed. So the only things you'll really find from the company are news articles that were approved by us, like exclusives, or something put out directly from one of our channels. You'll find very little from any of our employees, very little from any of our founders. We were very, very particular in that regard, not to allow anything to get out and to control the narrative around the company and what we were building. And there were benefits. There were benefits in that when it came to raising funds, when it came to explaining to customers, we didn't really have dueling opinions or different thoughts about what we were doing or who we were. And one of the best ways I can sort of explain that was that one of our competitors was very, very big at building out loud. They had a big Reddit page, a big subreddit. They had a big, big community. And when you went into their subreddit and people would talk about us as their competitor and what the pros and cons are, all of our customers would list the exact same pros and cons, because we were very careful about what we listed as our own benefits and disadvantages compared to competitors. And that helped us in some ways to really control our image, and it helped us to fundraise, it helped us in a lot of ways. But ultimately, I think it was also our downfall in that we were so careful about the narrative we crafted that we didn't necessarily let in others' opinions. And that's not only the opinions of random people online who are just going to shitpost, but that's also the opinions of our customers and people who actually we needed to listen to and needed to hear from. We didn't get to talk to those people. We didn't get to hear from them. We were so busy trying to craft a narrative that if someone's ideas or stories didn't fit into that, we kind of altered their version of it. And that ended up ultimately harming us because we didn't build a product that people wanted. When I did Law for Startups, it ended up actually being the exact opposite. Largely, not because my philosophy had changed at the time, to be honest, but because I just didn't have the time to carefully put into that project. Like 2 months after I started Law for Startups, I took a full-time job, and since then I've been working full-time. And my idea was, okay, I'm just gonna, as fast as possible, get something up, like a website up, basic things. I'm just gonna build as I go, there's no expectations here. There's no VC money. There's no pressure. Like no one's expecting this to become anything. I'm not expecting it to become anything. Nobody's like in any way invested in this financially, time wise, nothing. There's nothing to be lost if this all fails. And I just put it out there, and within 18 months, we had 30,000 people. We have people emailing every day requesting new contracts, new cases that I provide like my opinion on, new information to share. And it's just been really great in that we've gone from 0 to 30,000 people in such a short time. And we've done it solely because I put a site up with the intention of providing what founders might want. I realized that there was a gap in the market where a lot of founders don't have legal information and legal knowledge. So I said, I'm going to put up a website, and whoever comes here, I'm going to try to give them whatever legal information they need for free. And people started coming. People started asking questions. People started requesting things. And funnily enough, the more that people requested things, the more I found that other people needed those things. Like people don't have isolated problems for the most parts. A lot of the times what they want is what a whole group of people will want, and that led to them telling their friends, their colleagues, and everyone coming on. So if you're asking the benefits and potentially the harms of building out loud, well, obviously one of the harms is that it's difficult to explain what law for startups is sometimes, and that's a unique thing for me, because in my previous startup I started with what is this business, and what are we doing, and how are we doing it, and what is our story, what are we telling people. And with law for startups, it's harder to do that. In some ways that's more enticing, because I'm forced to sell the vision. I'm forced to say, like, I just want to make legal barriers disappear. I just want to make legal information more accessible, and that's where it started. And that's kind of the only core thing that is still there. Apart from that, it's just been the newsletter came from people wanting up-to-date weekly information. The templates came because I saw that that's one area where founders, including myself, had spent a lot of money. And a lot of the marketplace stuff that I'm looking to integrate in the future came from requests from people writing in and saying that it would be great if they could write a template and then request a lawyer or have a lawyer review it for a small $15-$20 instead of having to go spend like $1,000 to get it drafted from scratch. So that's one of the downsides. You lose that like narrative and that story, but you gain a different one. You gain a different one in that you're forced to sell a vision, and you're forced to sell the one thing that keeps the company going. The benefit is that I don't doubt for a second that I have product market fit. I don't doubt for a second that I'm doing something that benefits people. And every moment I spend working on that, I know that someone is benefiting. Like to this day, I still haven't sold any ads on the site. I still don't charge customers. Like there's no money coming in. And sometimes when I know I could instead be working at a law firm making $100 an hour, that hurts. But at the same time, I know that the things I believe in fundamentally as a person, the people who I want to help, the reasons I want to get up in the morning, like those are being fulfilled when I work on this company. And I know that because I'm talking to people and people are telling me, and I can hear the stories of people benefiting. So I'd say that's probably the biggest benefit. And having been through it, once before, I don't think there's anything more important than product market fit. I think that once you have that, everything else, there's strategy, there's podcasts, like you can find a way to make everything else work. But if you don't have that product market fit, if people don't want what you're building, you can be a great businessman, you can be the smartest person in the world, you're not going to build a company. You're just going to fail. And that's the one thing that Building Out Loud guarantees, that you have that fundamental core.
I think that's pretty amazing and incredible. And I love hearing you talking through how for your actual first company, you were very quiet. You were very buttoned up about it. And then now with this one, it was a project. You just put it out and you're allowing it to grow in a very community-led way, which is, something we're seeing a lot more of. And, when we talk about Web3, we're inherently talking about the use of blockchain technology and how that's changing the internet and how we interact with each other. But a lot of the ethos around that is around this idea of everything being done by the community, everything being community-led, being democratizing all things, whether it be capital, access, you name it. Even though there are some issues within that, and we can get into that into a later podcast. But I love that process. And yes, you did mention, at Rare Breed Ventures, my venture fund, we built in the public. I built in the public. I raised the vast majority of my fund one, which was a $10 million fund, off of Twitter, using the 506c designation and allowing people to hear about what we were doing and getting them to see who I was and who I was as a manager, what my personality was, how I sourced deals, the type of deals I worked on, all those things. Even though for those who follow me on Twitter, every quarter, I send out a quarterly update to the investors in my fund. I also do a version of that quarterly update on Twitter, right? I put out the metrics, I put out the numbers, I say where we are, what we're doing, and how we're doing, the good, the bad, and ugly, which has been a great benefit, right? I love the process of building out loud and building in public. But I will say it's not all great. It's not all upside, right? There's a wonderful piece to like building a community and having supporters and having them be engaged from the offset, and the ability to shamelessly talk about and plug what you're doing on a regular basis and it being very normal to what you're doing. But on the flip side, one, you kind of have to have or want the personality to be front facing and building in public, right? Law for Startups today, Liam isn't so much the face of it. He's letting the community drive that. But at some point, people are going to want to see him. And people are going to want to know the man behind the company. And as you build in public, it gives people a chance to see you and to know more about you and to be invested in you. You're basically becoming an influencer, which means there may be times where you go out to certain events and the experience is different because now everybody wants your time. Everybody wants to be around you. And, if you're an extroverted person, that might be just your thing. That might be perfect for you. But if you're an introvert, it might be really uncomfortable, right? Those are the kind of things that come with building it loud. Or when you're building it loud and building a community and have folks behind you and cheering for you, that's all well and good when things are going great. Well, if you make a mistake or you do something wrong or something happens, then all those people who follow you now also who went from saying how great you are could go to saying how terrible you are. We've seen things like this happen, especially on Twitter, right? People that everybody love, all of a sudden something happens, now everybody's tearing you down. And everybody has access to you because you built out loud, you built in public. That's something I think about constantly, like if anything happens or anything goes wrong, I know for as many people that say great things about Rare Breed and what we're doing, we have just as many people ready to tear us down in a very public manner. And when things aren't going well, it probably affects you. You're probably not that happy. And then when that gets, thrown out in the public and everybody can pile on and you can't get away from it, that could be really tough. That could be really hard to deal with. And so, understand building out loud has a lot of advantages from a business use case. But also understand, from a personal standpoint, is that the kind of way you want to build your business? We're having a lot of people talking about building in public, and it's like the popular thing. But it's not the only way. Always remember, there's more than one way to run a business. There's more than one way to grow a business. There's more, there's a lot of things you can do. I'm an advocate for building out loud. It's helped me, and I am very aware of the consequences, but this is what works for me. I also have the personality where I was born for the stage, baby. So this is cool for me. But then I know my man Liam over here is slightly different type of personality. So how do you feel about that as you're now building out loud for Law for Startups?
Yeah, I'd say there's 2 points on that. The first being that as someone who didn't necessarily use social media too much with my last company and personally doesn't use it, it's very weird getting onto social media. So the only reason I even got social media, you're like a Facebook friend of mine. I only have it for people who are very close to me. I got 30 people on it. When I graduated high school, I cleaned that shit up, and only people who I need to send me a text on a moment's notice are able to access that. LinkedIn is just a cesspool, and I've got maybe 4,000 or 5,000 people there, but I never check it, and it's very rare that people can contact me. And Twitter is probably the only one where I can talk to people and people can still get to me, but I don't really know the people. And it's like, the idea of social media, of actually being able to reach out and like communicate with people and build a community. And I only got it because when I started writing for Inside, it was a requirement that all of our writers have Twitter so that we can promote our work. And obviously my Twitter following has grown a little bit, nowhere near yours, but it was really like, it's only been 2 years and it's my first time venturing into it. And now having a company where the direction is very much decided by our customers, one of the biggest difficulties is really balancing how to efficiently spend my time on social media, responding to DMs, responding to emails that we get back from our newsletters, just communicating with people. Because that's one thing that's very new. Like, I didn't have to put time aside to talk to customers unless I had scheduled customer interviews with my last company. That wasn't a thing. Like, and we did that every few months when we needed help deciding on a feature, or we had some question about something in our product. We would schedule customer interviews. We'd actually just reach out and say, we'll give you $10. Can you come talk to us for 5 minutes? This is different. I don't choose when people come to talk to me. If someone wants me to provide a contract template, or someone wants me to talk about a certain issue, or someone wants me to expand the business into a new area, or wants to advertise on our platform, like, I don't get to choose when those conversations happen. People come to me now and people ask me, and it's very difficult sometimes to know when I'm wasting my time on social media and when I'm actually growing my business, responding to people and interacting with people. And I think that's a very, very hard line for someone like me who doesn't have the experience to really toe. And I assume for many other people who haven't had the experience of building out loud and having a following and getting all these cold messages, it's very difficult sometimes to really sort through it. The second thing would be, as you mentioned, you just naturally have that straight stage presence. Like when we started the Inside Business podcast, the management team was very divided between, should you host it or should I host it? And obviously they decided that we should both do it. And the logic behind that was that most people thought that I would bring more information, would be able to communicate more to people, would be able to really explain concepts, and that you would bring like a much more charismatic approach. You'd be much more experienced, that you would really be able to entertain people far better than I would. And I think that's true. I think if I go through our podcast history, stuff I did on like Clubhouse, on Twitter Spaces, like my general reputation seems to be that if I'm talking about something I'm very passionate about, I can be very, very engaging. But for the most part, I'm a very good source of information, but not like an overly crazy, charismatic person in the way you are. And I think that's a very fair assessment. And I think that also ties into my personality and like who I am and how I feel. In that, if you ask me to go give a speech, I have no nerves, no hesitation. I'm more than happy to go talk to a room of 100,000 people. Like, that doesn't scare me. If you ask me to go to like a random networking event with 30 people and I have to meet 30 people I've never been in a room with before, that is way scarier to me. So like these sort of like being able to talk to people, being able to just explain things and sort of have that one-way communication for me is relatively easy, and I'm happy to do that. And the building out loud part in terms of sharing information and being open about yourself and being willing to take feedback and criticism, like I'm perfectly fine with that. Like I, as a person, I'm confident in who I am and what I'm doing. Like I can take that. What's far more difficult is those random interactions, the things where people come up to you and they want to talk to you, or people want to discuss things, and suddenly sometimes I just don't want to do that. I'm not like the most extroverted person. I don't, sometimes I just want to spend time alone. I want to be doing my own thing, or like have my mind set on something. Like I'm really like a tunnel vision person at times. Like if I have something on my mind that needs to get done, it needs to get done. And people who are like standing in the way can really piss me off. And that happens now. Like that happens, and those people are customers, and I can't let them piss me off because they're important and what they want to say is very important. I need to listen to it. So that's really where I would say the difficulty comes for someone like me, who's less extroverted, less outgoing, less charismatic. Is I can shine for those 10-15 minutes that you need me to, but if you're going to expect me to go on Twitter Spaces for like 3 hours, you're going to expect me to like talk to people for hours and hours, or go to networking events and like meet new people all night. Like that's very draining, like mentally and physically. It's just hard for someone like me who doesn't necessarily get energized by doing that. I'm more get energized from seeing the results of my work than I do from doing that type of networking and meeting with people. So I think that's probably the biggest difficulty for someone who isn't energized and extroverted and motivated by those interactions all the time. And I think it's very unique to have to go through that and have to experience what that's like.
I think one thing, or I think what we're trying to get to here on the point of know who you are, know your personality, know what's best for yourself, right? Don't just do this because it's the cool thing to do or is what everybody's talking about, and do it within yourself, right? You can build out loud without having to give up too much of yourself, right? You're really just sharing the journey with folks, but you don't have to share everything, right? And you get to share as much as you want to, right? And so be careful with how much or how little you do share, right? There's you could share too much or you could share too little, right? But do what's natural to you. And if building out loud, building in public is not natural to you, don't do it. You don't have to. It's okay, right? And if it is natural, or if it's something that you think is right for your company, then do it within the range that you feel comfortable, right? At the end of the day, the goal isn't to get the most Twitter followers or become an influencer in the space. The goal is to create a long sustaining business that's going to be successful. And so I wish everybody out there good luck. Let us know what your questions are. Let us know if there are any other topics you would like us to hit on. Let us know if you're building out loud and you want us to give you a shout out. Happy to do so. We are here to support the community. And let us know if you're building and you don't want to build out loud and why. Happy to share those thoughts as well. But thank you so much, everybody, to the maiden voyage of the Build Out Loud podcast. Liam, you got any last thoughts for the folks?
Yeah, I think to sort of summarize it in maybe like one or two sentences, think of building out loud or building in public as a means to an ends and not an ends in itself. So don't think that that is the way of building a business or that is your business. Obviously, for some people, they're influencers, that is their business. But if you're trying to start a high-tech startup, think of it as a way to achieve that, a way to achieve traction, a way to achieve product market fit. You have to have some end goal in mind. Just building out loud in and of itself isn't something that you should be proud of doing or successful. Like it's not a thing. It's just a way of getting to a goal. So I think of it like that and know what that goal is. And when you start doing it, make sure that everything you're doing on socials, the interactions you're having are helping you get towards that goal. For me, like I've been very clear that it's about product market fit, making sure I'm building things that people want and hearing from customers what they like, what they don't like. That's why I'm doing it. And I think, with the podcast, it's the same thing. That's why we're doing it. We both know we have information. We know people want to hear it. We want to hear what you guys want us to talk about. But if you don't have that end goal and you just decide I'm going to share everything in public, that's a very easy way to just sink a lot of your time and to drain your energy doing something that's not actually going to end or lead to anything useful or actually help build your business. So I think that's the one thing to keep in mind. Think of this as a means to an ends and an ends in itself.
And I should just preference that while I did raise my fund off of Twitter and Built Out Loud, it was out of desperation for lack of a network. And so the fastest way for me to build my network without the ability to go to events and do things, because this was during the COVID-19 pandemic, I used Twitter and I used the ability to share my thoughts and gain a following to grow a network that allowed me to meet folks that could be investors in my fund. And so Building Out Loud for me was just a means of me growing out my network. I just happen to use Twitter. There are plenty of other platforms where you can do the same thing. But it was literally part of a strategy for me to grow the amount of people I knew to help me do the work that I do. So understand, like, there are reasons for doing it and reasons for not. But with that, Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. If you want us to dive deeper on this topic in a future episode, please let us know. Let us know how we did. It's the first one. We're going to get better at it. If the editing's terrible, shout at Liam, not me. He's the one who handles all those things. So I will throw him under the bus happily. And with that, I hope everybody has a good one. Peace out, y'all.